The gavel came down with a resounding crack, reverberating off the highly polished wood walls of the courtroom like a pistol. It was the sort of sound that caused one to sit up straighter in one's seat, the sort of sound that commanded silence. And silence quickly fell, thick and heavy, settling over all who were within. Robyn Brown remained immobile at the witness stand. Her hands shook so violently that she grasped the edge of the wooden board in front of her, hoping to steady them. Her chest heaved and fell in short, ragged breaths, and her eyes flitted over the expanse of faces turned back upon her. Some were interested, some were compassionate, but many, oh so many, were full of judgment. This wasn't any trial. No, this was the trial. The one everyone had been talking about for months. The one that had divided people into those who were defending her and those who were blaming her. For years, Robyn had been labeled as the woman who shattered the Brown family. Some claimed she had maneuvered her way into Kody's heart. Others said that she had poisoned the relationships between the wives, so that they made cracks which ultimately broke the whole family apart. And now, sitting there beneath the blinding glare of the lights in the courtroom, she wasn't only being judged by the law, she was being judged by her family, by the people in the gallery, and by society at large. The pressure of it lay on her chest, making it difficult to breathe. A murmur ran through the crowd of people seated behind her. Individuals adjusted in their seats, leaning forward as if sitting closer would mean they heard more truth. Journalists jotted in notebooks. Cameras clicked softly from the press row. Even strangers, individuals who had never known Robyn in their lives, looked at her with eyes that told her, "We know what you did." Robyn swallowed, her throat as parched as sand. Was she guilty? This was the unspoken question lying in the balance. Guilty of betrayal. Guilty of destroying a family. Guilty of making sister wives into enemies. But there was another question as well. One that smoldered more hotly. Was she just a woman who'd been struggling the whole time for love, for her children, for a space and a family who never fully accepted her? The silence grew. Even the distant whir of the air conditioner seemed to disappear. The judge, silver-haired and sharp-featured, with a commanding air, pushed his glasses up over the bridge of his nose. His eyes locked onto Robyn with a piercing stare that seemed impossible to avoid. The robe he wore rustled minutely as he leaned forward, the black material evoking authority, judgment, finality. His voice was low but audible throughout the courtroom. "Mrs. Brown," he declared, every word slicing through the air like a knife, "you may start your testimony." Robyn's heart was thumping in her chest. She could feel the pulse in her throat, in her temples, in the tips of her shaking fingers. She needed to say something, but her voice was stuck before it could make it to her lips. For an instant she scanned the room frantically for something, anything that would make her strong. Her gaze fell on Kody, who sat a mere few feet from her. His jaw was clenched, his face impassive. He appeared nervous, restless, as if he too realized the weight her words would bear. He had once promised her safety. He had once told her, "You'll never have to face anything alone again." But here she was, standing alone in the most terrifying moment of her life. Her eyes flicked, as if against her own will, to the other side of the room. Sitting there were Christine, Janelle, and Meri, 3 women who had referred to her once as sister. Their faces were changed, but the message in their eyes was the same: hurt, betrayal, anger. Christine's lips were clamped into a tight line, her eyes already welling up. Janelle's arms were folded tightly, her stance stiff, all of her muscles tense. And Meri just shook her head slowly, her face white, her eyes far away, as though she couldn't really believe what she was seeing. Robyn's gut twisted. These women had once been her family. They had celebrated holidays, eaten meals, birthdays together. They had laughed together, even cried together. But those were a lifetime ago. They weren't looking at her now as a sister. They were looking at her as an enemy. She wanted to scream. She wanted to yell, "I never meant for this to happen." But the words remained locked inside. Her listeners bent in closer. Anticipation. The quiet was so piercing that it seemed like it could slice through flesh. Robyn's fists wrapped around the wooden railing until her knuckles were white. This was it. This was what the world had been holding its breath for. Everything she said from this point forward would have the ability to save her, or seal her fate forever. Her mouth opened, but nothing escaped. Fear coursed through her chest. What if she spoke too quickly? What if she blurted the truth, and no one listened? What if this wasn't about a trial at all? What if this was about redefining her whole life history before those who already despised her? She shut her eyes for a moment, making herself take in a breath. 1, 2, 3. She needed to speak. She needed to speak her truth. She opened them again, squinting the tears that had risen to her eyes. The judge's gaze did not falter. The wives' glances did not weaken. And the crowd did not flinch. It was time. Robyn took a trembling breath, bracing herself at last to allow her voice to shatter the silence. She started. Her voice little more than a husky whisper, but with the power that made the whole room strain forward. In the one word, the air vibrated with tension. Eyes widened in quiet gasps. Pens poised over paper, waiting to capture each syllable. Camera shutters flashed. The air was colder. The lights were harsher. Time was slower. This was not just testimony. This was history in the making. And as Robyn began to speak, the world was holding its breath. The quiet within the courtroom was intolerable. Robyn had uttered her first quivering word, and already the burden of the trial was strangling all of them in the room. But she wasn't even able to speak again when the prosecutor stood up from his seat and gazed in the direction of the judge. Your Honor, prior to Mrs. Brown's further testimony, the court wishes to present evidence from those most impacted by her actions. The judge nodded. Very well. Call your first witness. A rustle of papers. A hesitation, then the name reverberated through the room. Christine Brown. Gasps of amazement spread through the courtroom. Everyone's eyes were on Christine as she stood up from her chair. She moved deliberately. Her shoulders set but her face twisted in anguish. Every step took more effort than the last one, as if she was bearing years of sorrow on her shoulders. She came to the podium, put her hand on the Bible, and promised to tell the truth. When she took her seat, she didn't glance toward the judge. She didn't glance toward the attorneys. She didn't even glance toward the crowd. Her gaze focused directly on Robyn, and for the first time in years the truth poured out. Christine's testimony. Her voice broke before she even got the words out. Robyn, she started to say quietly, her lips shaking, when you entered this family, you said you desired sisterhood. You vowed to me, vowed to all of us, that you weren't here to replace anyone, that you wanted to create love and harmony. Do you recall that? Robyn's head went down. She couldn't find her voice to respond. Christine went on, her tone increasing in intensity. Initially I thought you meant it. I embraced you. I attempted to view you as a sister, as a friend. But increasingly I saw the man I loved and gave up for drift away from me. I saw my kids lose their father's attention. I saw my marriage wither. And whenever I sought to battle for it, there you were, by his side, clinging tighter, making me feel insignificant. Her voice trembled, but her words cut through the air like arrows. You didn't just steal Kody away from me. You stole the security of my children, the safety of my family. You stood us out in the cold while you constructed your cozy little world with him. And then you had the nerve to stand there and cry tears in our eyes and tell us you were innocent. Robyn, do you even realize what you did? The courtroom hummed with gossip. Journalists wrote frantically. Flashes popped and the crowd leaned forward. Christine's tears overflowed at last. She brought her hand to her chest, her breath struggling. I will never hate you, Robyn. I'm too exhausted to hate. But I will never forgive what you did to us. You burned something beautiful. You reduced a family to ashes. The judge held up a hand. Thank you, Mrs. Brown. You can step down. Christine rose slowly, her legs trembling, and sat back down. She did not glance over her shoulder. She did not need to. Her truth had been spoken. Janelle's testimony. The next name rang out clearly. Janelle Brown. Janelle stood up, her stance rigid, her expression inscrutable. She moved deliberately, her heels striking the floor of the courtroom. She wasn't crying like Christine. Her strength was there, but the kind that is born in fire, the kind that only comes after living through betrayal, for many years. She swore and sat down, her fingers folded neatly in her lap, her eyes ice blue cutting. never broke contact with Robyn's face. Her words emerged calm, considered but waited. Robyn, I have always been a person who attempts to be reasonable. I don't scream. I don't strike out. I don't play games. When you entered this family, I needed to believe that you were real. I needed to believe that your cries were genuine. And for a while I did. She leaned in, her brow furrowed. But then I began to see the patterns. Every choice seemed to go your way. Every discussion somehow ended with you in the middle. And whenever the rest of us fought, Kody came to your defense without hesitation. Do you know how that feels, Robyn? To see someone you've loved for years just suddenly make you feel like a stranger in your own home? Robyn nodded her head a little, as if pleading with her to desist. But Janelle continued. You made me invisible. You made my children feel second class. And although I will never accuse you of wielding the knife, I will say this. You gave it to Kody, and let him hack us down with it. You saw what was happening, and you didn't do anything. The silence in the room was so deep that Janelle's breathing sounded amplified. She leaned back in her chair, her voice softer now, barely a whisper. I don't hate you either, Robyn. But I'll tell you this straight. You will never know what you took from me. You will never know what my children missed out on. And that will always be your legacy. The judge nodded. Thank you, Mrs. Brown. You may resume your seat. Janelle rose, her face blank, and resumed her seat without a look. Meri's testimony. The room was held in an unbearable tension, but it wasn't finished yet. The prosecutor rose again. The court calls Meri Brown, and for the first time the mood changed. While Christine's devastation, or Janelle's intensity, at least had something to them, Meri's return signaled something else altogether. Sorrow. Aching, deep sorrow. She moved slowly, as if reluctantly, as if every step was ripping her apart. She swore the oath, sat down, and placed her hands in her lap. She said nothing for a long moment. She merely looked at Robyn, her lips quivering, her eyes shining with tears. At last, she spoke. Robyn, you were my friend. Her words dangled in the air like smoke. I stood up for you. I fought for you. When others questioned you, I informed them they were wrong. When the family questioned you, I stuck with you. I listened to you when you indicated that you desired sisterhood. And what did you do with that devotion? You abandoned me. You let me starve alone. You allowed Kody to remove me from his life. Remove me from our marriage. And you said nothing. Nothing. Her tears fell freely now. She swiped them with trembling hands, but continued speaking. Do you have any idea what it's like to be left behind by the man that you gave your entire life to? To be sitting at home, night after night, wondering what you could have done wrong, while knowing full well it wasn't you. It was because he had someone else. And you were that someone else, Robyn. The courtroom held its breath apart from Meri's crying. You didn't hurt me. You shattered me. And the irony is, I don't even think you cared. You left me drowning. Robyn, you let me drown. And all those years I believed you were my friend. You were watching me go. Her sentences were more painful than any charge. They weren't yelled. They weren't dramatic. They were raw, naked anguish. The gavel of the judge tapped gently. Thank you, Mrs. Brown. You may leave. Meri stood up, her shoulders scrunched over, her face smeared with tears. She returned to her seat quietly without a word. The atmosphere after the wives spoke by the time all three women had spoken. The room was heavy with grief. The air felt thicker, the silence sharper. Even those who had come in skeptical of the wives' claims now sat stunned, unable to deny the power of their words. Christine's heartbreak, Janelle's anger, Meri's sorrow. Together they painted a picture of betrayal so vivid that no one could ignore it. And at the center of everything sat Robyn Brown, her face hidden in her hands, her shoulders quivering with tears. The gravity of their witness testimonies weighed on her, leaving her struggling to breathe. But the trial wasn't finished yet. The judge cleared his throat. Mrs. Brown, after hearing these testimonies, you will now get your opportunity to respond. The spotlight fell back upon Robyn. Her voice, her tale, her truth, whatever that was, would be the sole barrier between her and judgment. By not just the court, but the whole of humanity. The audience leaned forward once more, hearts racing, eager to hear what she would say. And for Robyn Brown, judgment had barely commenced. The courtroom was intolerably tense after Christine, Janelle, and Meri testified. Their words hung in the air like smoke after a fire, thick, choking, impossible to dispel. Each of them had testified with a knife, cutting into Robyn's bruised spirit, and now it was her turn. The judge leaned forward, his voice firm but authoritative. "Mrs. Brown, you may respond." For what seemed like an eternity, Robyn didn't budge. Her hands shook as they clutched the wooden railing of the witness stand. Her breath was shallow, ragged, as if she was struggling to hold herself upright there in front of everyone. She felt hundreds of eyes piercing her, the wives, the audiences, the juries, and most of all, Kody's. She had never felt so isolated. At last she raised her head. Her face was smeared with tears, her eyes crimson and puffy. Her voice was tenuous, childlike when she spoke. I don't even know where to start." The whole room leaned in. Pens scratched on paper in the silence. Camera lenses zoomed in. Reporters sat on the brink of their seats. Robyn swallowed hard. Her words shook, but they became louder. "Everyone believes they know me. Everyone believes they know what I did, who I am, what I intended to do. But no one has ever really heard what I have to say. Not ever." She breathed shakily and gazed at Christine. "Christine, I never wanted to steal Kody away from you. Did I not notice your hurt? Did you think I didn't hear your weeping when he decided to spend another night with me rather than with you? I did. And it killed me on the inside. But I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know how to keep him with you while his heart was already drifting my way." Christine clamped her jaw shut. She averted her face, fighting back tears. Robyn's voice broke as she spoke to Janelle. "Janelle, I never wanted you to feel invisible. I respected you. I envied the way you constructed your life, the way you cared for your children, the way you struggled so hard, and wanted to be like you. But Kody, he made decisions that I couldn't help, decisions that shut you out. And sure, perhaps I didn't struggle enough to prevent it. But I promise you, I never once desired your children to be any less than mine." Janelle's expression never changed, but her eyes shone. Finally, Robyn spoke to Meri. This was the most difficult. Her voice went low. "Meri, I loved you. I really did. You were the first one who accepted me. You stood up for me when nobody else would. And I betrayed you. I should have been there for you when Kody left you. I should have said something. But I was self-absorbed. I was afraid that if I became loyal to you, if I pushed him away, he would leave me behind too. And I couldn't handle that." Her shoulders were heaving with sobs. Tears ran freely down her face as she clasped her hands in front of her, as if praying. "I entered this family because I wanted love, because I wanted security, because I wanted my kids to have a dad who would never abandon them. I wasn't attempting to dismantle anything. I was simply desperate for a home where I belonged, for a man who wouldn't leave, for a family who would embrace me. And all I found was myself in the midst of a storm that never ended." Her voice finally broke. She covered her face with her hands, crying wildly. The audience shifted uneasily, some folks wiping tears from their eyes, others murmuring that it was all staged. But Robyn wasn't done. She pushed herself to stare up again, her face raw, her voice trembling but resolute. "I know everyone thinks I'm the bad guy. I know you perceive me as the one who came in and destroyed everything. But tell me, how is it right to blame it all on me? Kody made his decisions too. He decided to spend more time with me. He decided to stand up for me rather than you. He decided to split his heart rather than fight to keep it intact. Why isn't anyone asking him why?" The courtroom was filled with whispers. Kody fidgeted in his seat, his expression clenched with outrage and shame. Robyn went on, her voice growing stronger. "I'm not perfect. I did do things wrong. I depended on him too much. I cried too much. I wanted too much. But I never lied about wanting love, family, protection. I didn't join this family to break it up. I joined to save myself and my babies. If that was selfish, then so be it. I am guilty. But I never wanted to hurt any of you." Her words lingered in the air, raw and heavy. Some nodded in sympathy in the others shook their heads, disbelieving. The jury looked at each other uncertainly. Robyn's hands trembled as she picked up a glass of water on her table. Her voice fell again, softer now, almost breaking. "You see me as a monster, but I'm just a woman who was scared of being left behind once more. I was divorced once. I had once been left alone. I'd known the pain of losing everything, and I vowed that I would never let that occur with me or my children again. So yes, I clung to Kody tightly, perhaps too tightly, perhaps so tightly it destroyed all the other things around me. But I was clinging only because I was afraid of losing. Her words rebounded, echoing off the walls of the courtroom, embedding themselves deep in the hearts of her listeners. The judge shifted, visibly affected but still in control. Mrs. Brown, is there something you'd like to add? Robyn nodded once. She dabbed her tears, stiffened her back, and gazed at Christine, Janelle, and Meri for the last time. I'm sorry. I am so sorry. Not because I was caught, not because I'm here in court, but because I know that nothing I can say will ever restore what you lost. I will bear that with me for the rest of my life. And if that is my sentence, then so be it. The room was completely still. Even the clinking of pens ceased. All of them were seated, uncertain of what to think. Was this Robyn's reality, or was it merely another facade? Another act in a long history of tears and alibis. One thing only was sure: her words had altered the room. For the very first time, people weren't merely blaming her. They were doubting everything. And that is precisely what Robyn had been seeking. The silence following Robyn's testimony was short-lived. It was the sort of silence preceding a storm. Thick, oppressive, heavy with the burden of unexpressed words. And then, like thunder cleaving the sky, Kody Brown abruptly stood from his seat. His fists banged against the table, the sharp snap ringing out in the courtroom, like a pistol shot. The crowd gasped. The bailiffs braced themselves to step in. Kody's face was red with rage, his eyes burning with a mixture of fury and desperation. He pointed a shaking finger at Robyn. "Stop it, Robyn," he thundered, his voice cracking with rage. "Stop playing the victim. Stop manipulating this story so everyone pities you." The room became a whirlpool of whispers. Reporters pushed to write down every phrase. Cameras flashed like lightnings. Robyn winced, tears welling up in her eyes once more. She spoke softly, hardly audible. "Kody, why are you doing this to me?" But Kody wasn't done. His voice trembled, booming and raw. "You want to discuss choices? Good, let's discuss choices. I chose you, Robyn. I traded everything for you. Christine's trust, Janelle's respect, Meri's love. I traded it all because you led me to believe you were the only one who had any concern for me. And now look where we are. Look at us." His arms swept wide, waving dramatically to the courtroom, to the wives, to the ruins of what had once been their family. "Is this what you wanted? For them to despise me, for them to despise you, for us to be here as enemies rather than a family?" Christine leapt to her feet, her pale face blazing. "Don't you dare lay this on her, Kody," she yelled, her voice shaking with fury. "You left us behind. You neglected us. You played favorites and flattened the rest of us beneath your egotism." The judge slammed his gavel. "Order, order in this courtroom." But the frenzy had already released. Janelle stood next, her tone cutting, her fury surging to the surface. "No, Christine. She's right too. Robyn wanted him all to herself, and Kody let it happen. Both of them ruined this family. Both of them made us feel nothing while they pranced around acting like the perfect couple." Gasps echoed throughout the audience. Robyn covered her face in her hands and wept again. Kody lashed out at Janelle, his eyes venomous. "Think you're so innocent, huh, Janelle? Think you never pushed me away? You had your own life. You never needed me until it was easy. And now you're gonna stand here and play like you were the victim." "Because I was the victim," Janelle snapped back, her voice cracking. "My children witnessed you shutting them down, Kody. They witnessed you choosing and discarding who was important in your so-called equal family. Do you have any idea what that does to a child's heart? Do you even care?" The courtroom was electric. Pencils scurried across pages. The jury was shocked, torn between amazement and sympathy. And then, Meri stood. Her tone was softer than the others, but it echoed through the room with an uncanny heaviness. "Do you even hear yourselves?" she said, her voice calm but fraught with sorrow. "This isn't about who hung out more with whom. This is about trust. This is about betrayal. Kody, you betrayed all of us. And Robyn, you let him." Her voice cut through the yelling like a blade through glass. The succeeding silence was almost overwhelming. Robyn shook her head wildly, weeping. "No, Meri, no, I never meant to hurt you. I loved you. I still do love you. Mary's eyes welled with tears, but her face set. Then why didn't you fight for me? Why didn't you fight for any of us? You just sat there, crying, while we were being eliminated from his life. And you call that love? Robyn sobbed a strangled sound. I was afraid. I thought if I pushed too hard, he would leave me too. I couldn't bear that again. The judge pounded his gavel again. If there isn't order restored right now, I will have this court cleared. But the storm could not be contained. Kody spoke to the wives, shaking his arms as he pointed at each of them individually. You think you're better than me? You think you never made mistakes? Christine, you poisoned the children against me. Janelle, you treated me like a paycheck. Meri, you were so cold, so distant, you pushed me away, long before Robyn came along. None of you are innocent. None of you. His words cut like daggers. The wives stepped back, their faces twisted in pain. The jury looked appalled. And then, in a voice so soft it was almost imperceptible, Robyn spoke softly. So this is what love looks like. Blame, anger, destruction. Her statement fell across the room like lightning. Christine glared at Kody, her rage evident as she trembled. No, Robyn, this is not love. This is what occurs when one man plays God with women's hearts. This is what occurs when you make promises and then break them and call it family. She swept her arm across the room, taking in the devastation, the weeping, the shattered faces everywhere. This is what you built, Kody. For an instant, Kody stood stock still. His lips parted, but no sound escaped. His chest lifted and fell in harsh breaths. His gaze swept wildly from wife to wife, from the jury to the judge, like a man caught in a trap of his own construction. The audience hung silent once more, each member of that room holding his breath, waiting for what he would do next. And then, with a grumbling growl, Kody slammed his fists on the table, once more. I am not the bad guy here. I did what I thought was best. I tried to keep this family intact. But none of you ever stood by me. None of you. The wives all yelled back simultaneously, their voices crashing together in a cacophony of anger, sorrow, and betrayal. Reporters climbed onto their chairs, attempting to record every statement. The jury appeared stunned. The judge shouted, "Enough," banging his gavel so violently that it almost cracked. If there is one more outburst, I will clean this courtroom and hold each one of you in contempt. Finally, the shouting died down. The wives sat, shuddering with anger. Robyn's tears were a soft murmur. Kody fell into his chair, gasping for breath, his hands vibrating with rage. The silence that came afterwards wasn't serene. It was choking, electric. The sort of silence that caused each heart to pound louder, each breath to be more labored. Because each person in that room knew one thing. The truth wasn't finalized. The cuts weren't closed, weren't healed, and the blast they had just seen was merely the start. The air within the courtroom weighed more than stone. Following the torrent of screaming, weeping, and blame, the quiet was stifling. It was the type of quiet that wasn't peaceful. It was terrifying. Each heart thudded as the judge leaned forward, his gavel held in his hand like a weapon. His severe eyes scanned the devastation of the Brown family. Robyn still crying softly, Christine seething with fiery anger, Janelle shaking with rage, Meri sitting empty and crushed, and Kody slumped in his chair, sweat glistening on his forehead, his face more animal-like in its ferocity than husband. The judge's voice sliced across the silence like a knife. This court has had the privilege of hearing one of the most disruptive and emotional testimonies I have had the displeasure to hear. But through the yelling, through the crying, there exists one irrefutable fact. This family is broken, and the law demands clarity. The audience was holding its collective breath. The reporters had stopped writing. Even the jury appeared to be stuck. The judge looked at Robyn. Mrs. Brown, you say you did your best to keep this family intact, that you were a victim of circumstance, not a manipulator. But your decisions carried consequences, harsh ones. Robyn's mouth trembled. She held a tissue so hard it almost tore. The judge turned his gaze to Kody. His voice grew harder. Mr. Brown, your conduct in this courtroom has only served to validate that which testimony has shown: rage, favoritism, and a callous disregard for the emotional welfare of those you were charged to protect. You were the patriarch of this family, but instead of harmony, you brought discord. Kody shook his head furiously, muttering under his breath, That's not true. I tried. I tried. The judge slammed the gavel once. Silence. The room lurched at the noise. And then there were the words that would haunt the Browns for all eternity. It is the finding of this court that Robyn Brown's legal status as wife shall be dissolved forthwith. The marriage to Kody Brown is hereby dissolved. In addition, custody arrangements for the children shall be decided under state supervision, to ensure their welfare is not threatened by the turmoil of this household. Gasps tore through the courtroom. Robyn screamed, a harsh, raw sound that cut through all the ears in the room. She doubled over, grabbing her chest as if the words had hit her physically. Kody leaped up, his chair flying to the ground. No, you can't do that. You can't take her from me. His voice shook with desperation. She's all I have left. You don't know, without her, I have nothing. The judge's gavel came down once more. Sit down, Mr. Brown, or you will be taken from this courtroom at once. But Kody was not hearing. His crazed eyes scanned the room from Robyn to the judge, to the wives sitting rigidly behind their attorneys. This is your fault. He raged at Christine, his finger trembling wildly. You wanted this. You've been scheming against me from the start. Christine stood up slowly, her face white but firm. No, Kody. I didn't have to scheme anything. You wrecked this yourself. We all just lasted long enough to watch it occur. Her words were a blow to him more than the judge's decision. His lips parted, but he didn't make a sound. His shoulders fell forward. For the first time, Kody Brown appeared, defeated. Robyn clutched at him, crying hysterically. Kody, please do something. Don't let them tear us apart. But Kody wasn't going anywhere. He stared at the ground, his face broken, mute. Janelle leaned forward, her voice icy and calm. You always said God was on your side, Kody. Maybe this is his answer. The audience gasped again. Robyn wailed, shaking her head violently. No, no, no. This isn't God's will. This is cruelty. This is hatred. They all turned against us. Meri stood last, her hands trembling, but her voice calm. Robyn, you always wanted him. Well, now you can see him for who he truly is. And Kody, this is what happens when you let pride get the best of you. Families aren't formed on favoritism and control. They're formed on love, and you lost that a long time ago. The words hung there like a final judgment, icier, bolder than anything the judge had ever uttered. The bailiff stepped in, feeling the threat of another blast. But there was no battle left. Not in Robyn's quivering sobs. Not in Kody's empty glare. Not in the wives who had already cried out every tear they had. The judge rose, making the final ring of his gavel. This court is adjourned, and just like that, it was done. The aftermath. The courtroom slowly emptied, reminiscent of a war-torn battlefield. The first to bolt out were reporters. Their phones ringing, headlines already being flashed. Kody and Robyn Brown, marriage annulled. Judge condemns Kody's leadership. Sister wives' family shattered in courtroom meltdown. Christine marched out with her head held high, although her hands trembled at her sides. Janelle trailed after her, her jaw clenched, eyes brimming but fixed. Meri walked behind her, as if every step was weighed down by a lifetime of sorrow. And Robyn. She held on to Kody like a lifeline, crying on his chest, but he didn't envelop her. His arms dangled at his sides. His pale face stared blankly forward, his eyes empty of a soul that had already departed. Outside the courthouse, cameras popped like firecrackers. Fans and critics shouted questions, their voices becoming a tumultuous storm. Christine stopped for just a moment, looking directly at the sea of microphones. Her voice was steady, but her words carried fire. This wasn't about revenge. This was about truth. And the truth is, love shouldn't feel like chains. You were free now. The crowd erupted in cheers and gasps. Reporters scribbled faster. Behind her, Robyn screamed at the cameras, mascara streaking down her face. You don't know what you've done. You don't know what this means. We were supposed to be eternal. Kody drew her back gently, not out of love, but out of weariness. His voice was gruff, hardly above a whisper. It's over, Robyn. It's over. And with those words, the man who once insisted on loyalty, who once said he was the head of an eternal family, descended the courthouse steps. No longer a husband, no longer a leader, no longer even a father, but as a solitary man, closing scene, the camera would dissolve on that ghostly figure. Kody Brown amidst the bedlam of strobing lights, his wives departing in divergent directions, Robyn weeping in hysterics at his side. The voiceover would quietly murmur the question that would haunt each viewer long after the video had faded to black. Was this in the end about love or control? And the screen would go black.